Managing or control risk and finance. And for this, I would like to invite on stage Mr. Navneet Khandelwal, who is the CFO at ITC Infotech. Giving a brief introduction, Navneet is a seasoned finance leader with over 23 plus years of IT industry experience with expertise in corporate finance, controllership, system, process transformation, merger and acquisition, investor relations, and being a people leader. He's currently the CFO designate at ITC Infotech Limited, where he's responsible for corporate finance, business finance, treasury, taxation, controllership, IT and commercial functions. With this, let's welcome him with a big round of applause.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a tough time trying to talk about risk, and that too after lunch, when, and it's been a quite tasty lunch. Already, it makes people sleepy. So I'll try to not talk on technicalities. I'll admit one thing, I am myself not a risk professional from that perspective. So I am not here to talk about all the COSO standards and, ISO standards and all those things. My perspective is with respect to what I actually practice in life. Being a part of an organization, and it's more towards how do you practically deal with it from a day-to-day perspective. One element which I have seen working through organizations is that the board looks up to the CFO to be the torchbearer of, of laying down what should be the risk management philosophy of the company. And that's where, a CFO plays a very significant role in actually laying down the risk culture and trying to see how does the organization go down that path. I have few slides, but I would rather want to make it more interactive. I would try and wrap up my slides within 15 minutes and would want actually more Q&A from the audience and discussions. That is what I would appreciate. So there are a few key pointers or key takeaways I would want everybody to take from this. Number one is, actually business is all about taking risks. And if you don't take risks, you can't actually succeed. So that's a basic premise why any company or anybody is into business. And what CFOs have to do is, how do you enable and help organizations to take risks? The easiest choice for anybody is to walk away from a risk. In fact, it's a very well-known risk management, or I would say a risk control methodology, saying that you decide and not take that risk at all. Don't opt for that choice itself. But I rather would want to be a leader who is actually enabling the business to take a right risk based on the quantum that it actually should take for a reward which the business can manage. And in some form, what you are trying to do as a part of risk management is to see how you are eliminating chances of a failure and driving towards what could be a predictable outcome. That's the entire focus of any risk management technique that you try to adopt. And the way to look at it is, how do you enhance the chance of success? That's all you try to do as a part of the risk management mechanism that you would be deploying in your organization. The most critical element from a risk perspective is the culture that you are able to draw in the organization. Now, it's very important that right from the top, the senior management and everybody, they should be open to critique on whatever aspects they look at, because unless and until you let people come up with who are questioning your ideas and strategies, you may actually not be able to make it foolproof, which is a prerequisite to drive outcomes which are more predictable and which is very, very important for your success. And so this, encouraging people whenever to question or list out items which can impede the strategy or which can actually hinder the track that you're trying to take should be most welcome. And that's a culture, you can drive as a part of being the finance function or as a part of being the member of the senior management in your respective companies. True element of risk management happens only if, everybody, every manager, every line manager thinks about, what could be the 3 M's of risks. It's a McKinsey term, the way they call it, is like, how do you look at risk at a macro level, which is at a pure transaction level in the items that you are handling. It can be as routine as saying that if I have a particular delivery to customer, what can actually impact my timeline to delivery to a customer. Okay, that's a micro level risk that you look at, and people try to see how, you have to start seeing how do you mitigate that risks. So everybody has to in every function that you are actually working, one has to look from a perspective of what could be a transaction level risk, what could be a risk to a series of transactions, which could be saying that you are operating in a particular sector and you see there could be a macro headwind in that sector. So that itself is a risk. But people across all the levels should be cognizant of that and should think about it. That's the typical culture that one needs to drive. And also, think about what can actually impact the overall business model itself, the way you are operating. So, these 3 elements have to be ingrained into the thinking of everybody. And this can happen through the discussions you have whenever you are having, you are discussing any particular thing with respect to an operational item you are trying to drive, or even you are looking at a strategic perspective. Unless and until you have this part of your culture where everybody does think about risk in whatever actions they are doing, you really can't implement a true risk management philosophy. Eventually, the bottom line is you don't look at risk management as an item separately. So what happens in most of the board meetings, the agenda is there's going to be a risk management committee meeting. We have to, somebody has to present all the risk items. So the CFO will come, this is my risk register, these are the mitigation plan, everything is green, all is fine. The board takes cognizance saying very good, effective risk management practices, no issues. The next day you have a fire in one of the factories and you say that you have a significant loss at certain places. I'm saying what was the risk management there? So it has to move on from a textbook exercise where only a particular function is actually representing and talking about, saying that this is the risk and you're talking about it, and the board is just taking cognizance of that. Unless and until you practice it, you really won't be able to achieve what I would say the desired level of risk management, and you shouldn't think about it as a separate thing in isolation which has to be done. It has to be part of every action that you're trying to drive. The starting point for that is how do you integrate risk assessment itself as a part of your planning exercise. So typically organizations do a strategic plan, then an operating plan, but at the end of the day, what are the impediments which could impact your ability to achieve your strategic objective? That a line manager or a business head has to think upfront. It can't be something which after the planning exercise somebody starting to think about what could be the risks. When you are actually formulating a particular strategy or you are saying that this is where I will go, you also need to think of what are the risks to it and formulate strategies to mitigate those risks. That becomes a part of your operating plan, and subsequently you will see whether have you mitigated all the items that you are looking at. Naturally, if you are able to do that, the probability of hitting the desired outcome increases. Eventually, success is not a recipe just based on this. There are a lot of other things which impact, but you are just improving your chances of hitting a desired outcome. and hence starting to think of it right at the inception of the planning exercise itself, be it the strategic perspective or the operational perspective, makes a lot of sense. And that's where you look at all the aspects, be it a macro level risk or be it a micro risk, and if that actually is a part of the way you're looking at business, it would make sense. So if you're, when you are presenting to your board, if the business talks of saying that this is the kind of growth I have to achieve, okay, and I see these are the risks and this is the way I will mitigate them, that makes a much more impact from a perspective of how you will be able to drive it. And over a period of time, you will be able to track whether the risks that you had envisaged, were you able to actually really manage them effectively or not. I would tell you that any man of ordinary prudence who is actually presenting any strategy or any plan, when you ask him what are the risks to it, I would say 95% of the times they exactly know what the risks are going to be there for it. And they also know what are the mitigation strategies. It's only trying to get it articulated properly and ensuring that you are tracking it towards it and you are really mitigating those. That's how you will be able to achieve a much more effective risk management. And that is the aspect where most of the organizations fail. And hence, I would suggest it should be looked at as an integrated exercise, not while you will look at it as a separate element only from a perspective of seeing how effectively you are managing risk of the overall organization. But it has to be part and parcel of every action or every plan that you are trying to build up. Any risk management starts with accountability. Unless and until you put ownership, saying that this is the person who will own to drive a particular outcome, you will never be able to achieve it. And that's an element where finance can really play a very significant role in trying to put down, saying that when we are looking at a particular strategy or a perspective, these are the real owners who have to take ownership of driving mitigations to particular items. And that's where the accountability, there's a term called as the 3 lines of defense. It's nothing but you will typically have 3 lines of defense of, at the topmost level is the ownership, which starts with from a CEO, the senior management, a business head or the CFO, and then it goes down to levels below. So it percolates down to all these levels, and defining that upfront is most critical aspect in trying to drive an effective risk management. Another element where finance can play a very significant role is a scenario planning as a part of your exercises, be it any business decision you are taking or be it any, like say for example, when you are looking at acquiring a company, okay, that's a particular business decision you are trying to take. In that as well, one would look at scenario analysis, saying that, I have seen, having been part of multiple M&A deals, when you start an acquisition or a target diligence, everybody is so positive about the transaction, you can't even think about that it can go wrong. Saying, boss, this is the best technology, these guys have best experts, and I think this is completely synergistic. While, on the standalone basis, they will themselves grow at a 15% CAGR. With the, the added advantage we bring in, the combined synergistic growth will be about a 25%, 30% CAGR, and that's a slam dunk, it's a done deal. But it's also important to see that, okay, if everything goes well, this is the best case. What if some of this risk happen, and what could be a risk adjusted case? And should such risks happen, what would we do? Would we still realize the value that we are trying to pay upfront? I mean, just trying to give a practical example to it. So that's where finance plays a very significant role in trying to do what would you do if something happens? And I think a significant chunk of what is the scenario planning we have learned through what happened as a part of COVID, when nobody anticipated such a level of impact could happen to the business, and it really did happen. And from there on, I think organizations have geared up. But for every major decision that you look at, a risk-adjusted view is very, very important. And I have seen experiences when we've done a transaction 3 or 4 years back, and now we are going back to the papers saying that what was the risk-adjusted view we had put and what is the scenario planning that we had done, which actually came in handy. So that's a perspective I would live with all of you. From a day-to-day perspective, there is another very important element is the crisis response playbook. Again, it's more about, so as a part of risk management philosophy, you will always look at what are the existential risks and work towards mitigation of them. And the biggest example is everybody does a BCP planning, okay, a business continuity planning, and fire drills and all those things are typically very common. And I think everybody of us would have gone through a fire drill at some point in time or the other, and it's very meticulously followed. Actually, this is something you have to follow in all new kind of risks which are emerging. So why only on fire, or why only on a BCP where you check whether your DR site is functional or not? It applies to various other things. Just for example is, you're doing a mock drill of a cyber security attack, a ransomware attack. Most of the people have good cyber security controls, or they invest in evolving them. But what if it really impacts you? What do you do? Most of the organizations don't know what to do. There have been cases of ransomware attacks. What happens when there is a ransomware attack? Somebody has just taken charge of your entire mailing systems and randomly sending mails to your clients. And they are saying that if you really want excess of it back, you have to pay $10 million, $15 million. How do you deal with such cyber criminals? There are particular agencies which are available, but would you run around at that point in time? So, some element of such drills, which are not only a fire drill, actually have to be a part of your risk management framework. If they are not there, I think it's not pressure tested, and a lot of this thing will actually remain in theory. When it comes on to an actual issue, you will be at loss as to what do we do, because the shit can hit the roof, and at that point in time you will be under tremendous pressure, and most of the times companies really do falter on these kind of things. There is one perspective, I've spoken to multiple CFOs, and they talk of, I've got this risk management tool where I have a good track of our repository, we know the entire risk register, we track all the matrices and everything. I agree, I mean that's good to have it at one place where probably you are monitoring it through the tool, but don't restrict your risk management to a particular tool or to saying that this is the outcome of it. It is beyond the tool, it is more beyond how do you practice it, and that is something what a CFO or a finance team can actually influence very significantly. You have to go beyond it and see how is it really being practiced, or how you are really living with it. Is one of the most important aspect, and that's where you will use technology for a lot of other areas where you have to keep on evolving on it. It's not about that just you have created a risk register and you are looking at it. It has to be significantly dynamic, because business is dynamic, risks are dynamic, and that's where you would typically use technology related to data and try to put, I would move to the next slide, try to put better mechanisms on how do you do measurement reporting of those, and it would be a part of your integrated part of your organizational dashboards, be it your monthly MIS or a weekly flash or a daily flash, whichever way you operate. It should give you the RAG status, or it should give you the areas where actually you need to look at it proactively. What is most important is you have to move away from trying to report a particular thing, which is after the fact. What risk management means is you are actually giving leading indicators which indicate that if these are not managed efficiently, you actually are going to have a problem. And so management can actually act on the leading indicators to it before you can, so you have sufficient time to be able to manage that. So say for example, a leading indicator could be, one of the things which everybody tracks is your funnel, okay? But before something gets qualified as a funnel, you will have probably leads. One of the leading indicators could be how many leads or qualified leads are coming in. And then it actually translates into funnel. And tracking of that, giving an alert saying that something is wrong, it's looking to be going down, probably is one of the measures that you look at. So in any area or every area you look at, it's important to define simple measured matrices which are measurable, can be reported quickly, and will initiate a particular action which is a part of your risk mitigation strategy. That's how your systems and how do you report with data should be configured. Another important aspect is how do you keep learning from experience. See, depending upon the industry you operate in, you would have attrition rates varying from a single digit to 20s or 30s if it's a BPO industry. But how do you ensure that the learnings from failures are documented well, so that people are aware and you actually imbibe those learnings in your actual practices, translating them into actual practices so that you can be much more effective in managing it the next time it happens, would be really great. Like again, I'll give you the M&A example. You've done a transaction and you have gone through an integration. Typically an M&A integration is a very significantly, I would say, it's a very effort intensive activity where a good integration would determine the success of the transaction done or not. So having done an M&A, have you learned how do you deal with integration aspects to it, so that subsequently if you do another transaction, you are actually able to use the mistakes from the past into future, and that's an element. How do you keep on refining your processes, your review mechanisms based on the learnings you have had, becomes the most important perspective in trying to manage and mitigate risks. So these are the points I wanted to make, and I'll be happy to take questions from the audience now.
Okay, do we have any questions?
Hi,
Yes.
this is Arnav from GLIDS. I just want to understand, internal financial controls, IFC is applicable in so many kind of companies. How can we get the best out of IFC in terms of mitigating those risks business can foresee? If that is helpful in some way.
Yeah, actually, I'm glad that IFC framework is actually expanded significantly, and you can use the threat of auditors and ensuring that we are able to get this to drive the points here, because IFC is not only about the financial controls that you are actually deploying in your reporting. It also, you can take it a little bit deeper, because eventually what impacts your financials is the underlying business transactions. So you can define to the level you want to go with that, should you want to get there, as well as the systems perspective in terms of whether your systems are operating effectively is another element which is a part of an IFC. So that also helps. But at the end of the day, you might still have to strike a balance, because IFC is a part of risk management. Risk management is even more, a larger thing, because most of the time from an IFC perspective, you would be the typical finance team, and to the extent the transactions impact the business guys, they will be involved. But risk management, everybody in the company should be thinking about it. So you can use that as a tool, but there will be a limitation towards it to drive the outcomes that you want to drive as an organization. Other thing is, as a CFO, I would not want to encompass IFC into complete risk management. Otherwise, I will just be sitting with the auditors trying to close my books. So you have to take a practical call, is what I would say.